예, 감사합니다. Okay, thanks to all of you, and it's a great pleasure to meet you for this global HR forum. And for this morning, this is first session, and we are going to talk about our future. So I believe only mankind, human beings, we are thinking about future. Always, future is more important than present. Tomorrow is more important than today. So in that sense, we have many things to do and to think about our future. And maybe the most important one is economic growth. So we have two talks today. The first one is science and technology R&D, and the second one is innovation and business. The first one will be given by President Daniel Zajfman from Weizmann Institute of Science. Maybe all of us know that this is quite famous and very competitive educational and research institute in Israel. And he's going to talk about how to invent a better future. Well, indeed, although we cannot predict the future, we can create our future. We can invent a future. So we'd like to have a wisdom and knowledge how to make our future better than now from you. And the second talk will be given by Martin Derbyshire from Tangerine. Tangerine is also a very famous design company. Well, I heard from him that all the employees of Tangerine company is less than 40 or 50, but they are working for really worldwide. They have many activities and business activities even in Korea with LG, Samsung, and Hyundai. So he is a well-known innovator and businessman. So really directly related to the economy of our future. So let me invite first speaker, President Daniel Zajfman, and he's going to talk under the title, How to Invent a Better Future, Science for the Benefit of Humanity. Okay, please welcome him.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome all of you to this session. I think the title actually should explain everything. I mean, most of the people will try to give a lecture about how to predict the future, which I actually think is impossible. I think the only way to go forward and the only thing we can do is actually to invent our own future. Just as a background, I'm a physicist, I'm a scientist, and while the future is made not only of science and technology, it is made, of course, of many different things. I will focus on the issues of science and technology. And I think, as you all know, and it's very, very much known in Korea, I mean, science and technology really influences our society for the last 20 to 30 years. And I think there's no doubt it will even influence us more the future society in the next hundreds of years. Science and technology are everywhere. And by the way, those who believe this is only about computers and drugs and communications and so forth, you can see how much we can influence the social work or the social world by technology. Facebook, Twitters, and other inventions, basically technological inventions, are changing the way societies are being looked at and how our kids are behaving. So don't be fooled by thinking that science and technology are only about computers and communications and lasers and drugs and so forth. It is also, and more so in the future, about social changes, because it is affecting the way we look forward. Now, I just want to say a few words about science in general, just to remind you that science was really, emerged really many centuries ago in trying to change the way society were actually looking at the world through speculations and superstitions and mysticism that were the most important part of the way we behave centuries ago. And it is through evidence-based that we have succeeded to change the world by looking at what the data is and using this data to make some prediction about the future. And of course, the world of science at that time was opposed, if you want, in a way, to a system which was based on belief by introducing rationality, methodology, predictability, and very importantly, repetitions as the fundamental principles for the quest of knowledge, meaning that evidence-based is something which is very important for trying to understand what the future is. Not just dreams, but really knowing what we know today and trying to look at what the future is, what is in the future for us. Now, the question is, as a scientist, that we ask ourselves all the time is, can we really predict the future of technology? I mean, do we really know what we're up to in the next, I'm not talking about the next 3 years, but let's say the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And I guess it's enough for you here in Korea to look at this device that you have been designing so beautifully. And if you would have think 30 years ago that this would be in your pocket, I guess nobody here in this room would have ever dreamed of this. And the statement I'm going to make is that it is basically impossible for us, even the best possible scientists and those who know all the details of science, to make clear predictions about the future of technology. Perhaps the two most well-known examples, more than 100 years ago, is a statement by the well-known and well-respected physicist, Lord Kelvin, who in 1895 said the heavier-than-air flying machines are impossible. It didn't take many, many years for having the first airplane to fly, so you can see how physicists can be wrong on something which is very fundamental as today's society, and it didn't take many, many years. Or even worse, if you know the history of computers, many, many years ago, back in the 70s, there were two major companies fighting on the future of computing. One of them is still called IBM. The other one was called DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation. These two companies had a major fight about who would dominate the world of computing. And in 1977, Ken Olson, the president, chairman, and founder of DEC, made a very famous statement saying that there's absolutely no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. I have one in my pocket, and every one of you has in pocket. It took 10 years for everyone almost to have a computer in your home. You can see from this statement how complicated it is, even for people within the business, to know something about the future of science and technology. And of course, there are many more examples like this. There are, of course, examples of people who have been very successful in predicting the future of technology. I tend to believe that these people have been very lucky, which is fine. This is also important. So when we look at the problem of scientific research, and we need to understand, if we cannot predict the future, how are we to invest our funding or money today so that we can invent a better future? If it's not predictable, what are we to do today so that we can actually do something which is right for the next generation? So let me remind you how scientific research works in a very simple way. And it's very simplistic, but of course, it is more complicated, but I have little time. I want to remind you that the whole of scientific research, the one I'm talking about, which is basic research, the fundamental one, the one which is trying to understand how the world works, to understand what is the universe, to understand what is human being at the very fundamental level, is there to basically fill a reservoir of knowledge. And that reservoir is filled by many people, many scientists in all countries, and it is a kind of accumulative knowledge which is going into a bucket. And once this bucket is full, and we never know exactly when it is full, someone, very often someone else, not the scientist himself, understand that from this bucket of knowledge, and it's usually not one single scientist doing a major breakthrough, but rather a large group of people who have been contributing in different ways to the different aspect of a specific field, someone else usually would come, realize that the bucket of knowledge, the reservoir of knowledge is full, and one can use it to actually move to the industry and try to create a new market, which end up being a lot of product. And that's the usual way people look at the moving from science to technology, though I have to admit this is a very simplistic way of looking at things, and there are, of course, way more convoluted issues here. As an example, if you go back more than 100 years ago, the Industrial Revolution in the UK, where steam machines start to work, was way before science developed itself. Thermodynamics came actually 50 years later on, understanding what steam machines were actually doing. So it can also be reversed, where first of all we have machines and then we have the understanding. Even today, by the way, many of the drugs we're using on the market, we don't actually understand the way they work. It's fine, they cure people, but we don't have a clear understanding of how the molecular mechanisms are working. So the question is, if we have so much uncertainties in all these paths to go from scientific research to a product, what are we to do at the level of this original scientific research? And my argument that I'm going to develop this morning is that one of the most important tools we tend to forget to use is something we call human curiosity. And I'll show you that human curiosity is an amazing fuel for moving forward in terms of science and technology. Maybe the best way to understand this is to refer to this very famous long statement made by Donald Rumsfeld when he was the Department of Defense in the United States. We said three things. And of course, he didn't think about science, but actually I found it to be quite applicable in terms of science. He said there are known knows. These are the things we know that we know. And then there are known unknowns. This is to say there are things that we know we don't know. There are things we know we don't know. But it's even more interesting. There are also unknown unknowns. There are things we don't know we don't know. And that's, in fact, the question that fundamental science has to ask: how to discover the unknown unknowns, things we don't even know exist and can make dramatic change to the society. Not the thing we know we need to develop further, but rather the major discoveries that make major change in the society. And my argument is many of these things are not known at all to us. We have the feeling that we know a lot about science. I can tell you as a scientist, I have the opposite feeling. I believe we know very little about this world, so little that the major discoveries actually are ahead of us. So just as an example of unknown unknowns, just for you to understand, I'll give you one or two examples. Let's assume we would be here 150 years ago, and I would ask you how to discover X-rays. I mean, I'm sure you all know what X-rays are all about. They make beautiful pictures of our bodies. But as you realize, back in the 1870s, this was an unknown unknown. Nobody knew that there could be a radiation that could go to your body and make a picture of your bones. So how do you discover something you don't even know exists? What's the procedure? Just to remind you of the historical fact, it was discovered by a German scientist, a German physicist, Mr. Röntgen, and that scientist, that physicist, was doing very, very boring experiment. The type of experiment that nobody would pay attention to it, and type of experiment that actually were made for 20 years before him. He was basically looking at a flask of gas, connecting this to electrodes, and trying to measure how current electrons are moving from one electrode to another one, and producing very boring graphs. I know you can't see them, but that's fine. I did this on purpose because they're really boring. And believe me, there would have been no funding for this type of business, because who cares about how electrons are moving from one electrode to another one when you change the gas into this flask? Now, it so happened that one day in his lab, he saw some scintillation, some light on the wall, and he was very curious about the light, and he realized that it comes from the instrument. And so he started to look from where this is coming from by switching on, switching off, and then covering the whole instrument. And to his surprise, he discovered that no matter how he covered the instrument, the light was still on the wall. So in his mind, how could light get through a piece of wood which is covering the whole instrument? And then he did something that every man is doing when he doesn't know what he's doing. He actually called his wife. As you know, your wife usually knows better than you what you're doing. And his wife puts his hand in the front of the light and got a picture. And this is the first picture of Röntgen's wife. Now tell me, what was the program here? What was the strategy? How did you know you're going to discover X-rays? Absolutely no knowledge. This is unknown unknowns. And there's no strategy except curiosity and luck, which is very important, by the way, a very important talent, to be able to make discoveries like this. Or think, for example, about an application we use every single day, your GPS. I'm sure you've been using it In Seoul, it is quite complicated to drive, so everyone uses a GPS. But you know, the GPS is a modern invention, which used lots of satellites in orbit on Earth, and it's all based on several discoveries, but one of them, or two of them actually, are the atomic clock, which are about 60 years old. And if you ask people who have developed atomic clock, which are instruments that tend to measure the time in a very, very precise way, if you ask the people, why are you doing and why are you being so precise clock, nobody would ever need clocks that can measure to such a precision time. They had no answer. They didn't know why they wanted to measure the time so precisely. The only reason was curiosity. The curiosity was, how precise can we be in measuring time? That's an interesting question. What is it good for? No idea 60 years ago. And of course, the second point is Albert Einstein theory of relativity. Your GPS would not work without Albert Einstein relativity. But relativity was discovered in 1905 and 1915, and your GPS would be wrong without it. But ask Albert Einstein, why are you studying the theory of relativity? And he would just say, it is because it is a beautiful theory of the world. And that was enough. That's curiosity-driven research. There's no connection whatsoever in the mind of Einstein and the mind of the people doing atomic clocks to their work and our ability today to drive in the street of Seoul. It took 100 years between the relativity and the GPS to develop, and nobody could make any prediction about the use of the theory in the devices of today. So you can see how unconnected scientific research can be, and how much the time, or the gap in time, can be long before we can make an application of very fundamental scientific discovery. Perhaps the last example I like to give is how curiosity can make huge change in our world. Again, we would have been sitting here 200 years ago. The only way we would have been looked at each other is by using candles, because that's the way to get light into a room. And I want to remind you that about 200 years ago, there was a lot of research fund, R&D, in the field of candles, specifically, by the way, in the UK. Major investment were made to try to get better candles that light longer, that produce more light, different perfume, different colors, different materials. And that was a huge industry, and the world was moving forward, and every year there were better light and cheaper one. And one day, of course, came Michael Faraday. And what Michael Faraday did is inventing electricity. Now, I want you to think about the following statement. It doesn't matter how much money you're going to spend on developing new candles. This is not the way you're ever going to discover electricity. There's no connection between moving forward in science and development, in research and development on candles and discovering electricity. It comes from a totally different process. The process of curiosity, of trying to understand what the world is made of, or what we call today blue sky research, or what I call curiosity-driven research. And this is a process which is critical to make or invent, if you want, a better future. So my statement that human curiosity is a powerful tool for discovery actually can be proved by lots of different pieces of equipment we're using today. This is only a small number that were never discovered, or these discoveries were never made by people who believed that it would actually be useful. Not the GPS, not the laser, not MRI machine, not even the Teflon in your kitchen, or microwave oven and so forth. Not even the Viagra was discovered to do what it does today. So many of these discoveries, in fact, major discoveries that changed the world, were never made by people who tried to solve a problem. It was mostly done by people who try to understand how the world is working. Insights. And my worry about these insights is that the whole world today is moving in a different direction. It is programmatic. It is trying to tell science what to do. And we tend to tell our students, or professors, or universities that we know what we want, and this is the program, and this is how we should fund it, and we want you to work along these lines. It's fine if you know what you want, but if you want to discover the unknown unknowns, this is clearly not the way to go. So the question is, if you don't know what you're doing, and I often say that true scientific research is when you don't know what you're doing, which is, of course, quite a strong statement. The question is, at the end of the day, we need to manage scientific research. So the question, how you do that, if you have so much uncertainties, and how to make these scientific programs, if you can call them program efficient, and what's the best strategy to invest in scientific or basic scientific research. And of course, once we have done this, how do we transfer these ideas to the industry? And you've seen it can take decades to move to the industry. And really, what is the role of scientific academic research in the future world? So the first thing I'd like to do is to, again, in an oversimplistic way, and I know it is oversimplistic, to remind you that there are different types of research, and we need all of them, by the way. One can go from the applied research, which is on the right-hand corner, which I call the lower risk in terms of what we expect, but also the lowest payoff, into the basic research at the upper left corner, which is the highest payoff, but also the high risk. And what I see in the world of today is a diminishing investment in this basic research, high risk, high gain part of it, because we want to live in a secure world where every single dollar or every single penny we put into research will provide a return that we can actually certify and know ahead of time. And I'm trying to convince you that not knowing what will be the return is also very valuable. So the world of today is mostly made of the rest of the rectangle, and the basic research, high payoff, high risk, is less and less considered in the world of today, which is, in my opinion, a major problem for trying to create a future. So, in my opinion, it is the business of academic institutions to transform money into knowledge, full period, and it is the business of the industry to transform this knowledge into money. And that's another issue which I've been observing for the last decade, or more than a decade, 2 decades. It is that these two models tend to blend, which I don't think it's a good idea. Many universities believe they can also transform knowledge into money. That's not the right way, or transform knowledge into products. It is not the role of research institutions to develop products. It is the role of research institutions to develop new knowledge and to stop at the knowledge level. We, as research institutions, do not know how to make products. We have to allow the industry to pick up on our knowledge and to develop it, and not to do it by yourself. I see major pressure from government trying to convince academic institutions they should go to the business of making products. That's a big mistake. It will not be successful. It will not be successful, by the way, simply because the type of individuals we're hiring are not business people. They have no idea about the need of the market. Try to take Einstein to make a product and see what would happen. It would have been, I'm pretty sure, a disaster. Professors that do scientific research are unable to understand what the market needs. They have to be kept to make major discoveries and understand how the world is working. They have to be driven by curiosity. Industry has to pick up on these results and to transform this into value, into market. And as I say, the time difference between the two could actually be quite long, which is, I understand, difficult to manage for a modern society, but we have to get used to it. So let me say a few words about our approach at the Weizmann Institute of Science, a small research institute located in Israel, south of Tel Aviv, which is only and purely focused on what we call curiosity-driven research. We deal with all the issues of mathematics, physics, biology, and chemistry, which is the fundamental of science. We have no engineering school, no political school, and no financial schools. We don't deal with political issues, just the fundamental of science. We are very good at putting these things together and creating basically a platform where we don't care if you call it mathematics or biology or physics or chemistry, it all works together. We include into this platform a high-level education program, which is only a graduate school, so we have no undergraduate students, but we also put quite a lot of emphasis on educating the public, which, by the way, is very important because there's a big misunderstanding in the public about the role of scientific research within universities. And at the end of the day, we score everything with a program of intellectual property and technology transfer, which I will describe in just a few words. So that's a platform. That's what we do. We do fundamental research driven by curiosity, and we hire or we bring students into this business, if you want. We educate them, and we educate them as future scientists. Now, this is about 250 research groups, altogether about 4,000 individuals working in this campus, and a research budget, operating budget of about $400 million together. Our strategy is very simple. We have no scientific strategy. We clearly do not know what the future will be, and we do not invest in specific fields. All fields are important, and I don't think that we could make a discussion and argue about, is it more cancer research, or is it more energy research? Is it nanoscience, or is it artificial intelligence? What is more important? The truth is I don't know, and I don't think someone really knows. All of it is very important. What we have learned over the history of science is what makes these fields moving forward is not the topic being important, it's the fact that you have the right people in the right topic. It is not science-driven, it is scientist-driven. And this is why we at the Weizmann Institute believe that our budget is not to be invested in science, it is to be invested in scientists. And that's a major difference. We invest money in people and not in topics. And it doesn't matter for us that you're trying to convince me that cancer research is more important than astrophysics. I will not agree with you. Cancer research seems to be more important than astrophysics because you believe that through cancer research you can cure cancer, but I want to remind you that astrophysics has been a major driver to discover new imaging devices that they're used in all CTs and MRI devices that they're used to cure cancer. Without this technological advancement that were made from the curiosity-driven paths of astrophysics, these machines would not be today on the market. So this is way more convoluted than what we like to think. And investing big budget in cancer research because it is important today might be a major mistake. Not because cancer is not important. All is important. The question is, who are the scientists? Who are the people who are driving the topic? And the question is, how do you select them? And given the fact that this is an HR conference, I want to say a few words about hiring the right scientist. It is my opinion, and that's how we have been working for the last 60 years, that what we need to hire are people who are knowledgeable, curious, and passionate. And if I had to put an order, or if you want priority, I would even say first curious, then passionate, and by the way, less important, knowledgeable. Knowledge, of course, is important. We all need to know something. But if you focus on your knowledge, you would only know what you know today, and you would never know what is unknown for tomorrow. Even worse, those who really know a lot, specifically the people who know they know, are actually very dangerous people, because there's no room for discoveries in people who know they know. So when we hire scientists, or even when we hire students, we look at their curiosity, at their passion for science, and of course, their knowledge of science. But that is not the factor. This is not how we grade them. That's not how we look at them. We try to look into this curiosity and passionate part, and what we want them to be is not to be knowledgeable, curious, and passionate about science, but about their own idea. Because we have learned that the only way science can move forward is by having scientists identify themselves with their own field, not with the field that the institute or the president or the director decided is important, not because the government decided that nanotechnology is important, but because the scientists are passionate about their own ideas and their own goal. This has been the history of science. This is how X-rays have been discovered. That's how microwaves have been discovered. That's how lasers have been discovered and so forth. And not because there was a program, but because these individuals, these exceptional individuals, were let as free thinkers and provided funding and infrastructure. And today we are forgetting this past, and we are trying to move into a future which is programmatic, in my opinion, a major problem. So what's the business plan? At the end of the day, people like to have a business plan when they run even a scientific institution. How do you create what I would call new and valuable scientific knowledge, something that could be used, you don't know when, you don't know exactly how, in the long future, not today, and there's still a method to do that. As I said, the first one is, and that's the most critical step, hire scientists, excellent scientists, who are knowledgeable, curious, and passionate about their own ideas. I explained this. The second thing is, offer them top quality human and physical infrastructure. They can't work if you don't have the best infrastructure that is possible, so that they can actually drive their own ideas with help of additional people and physical infrastructure. Very important, provide them the opportunity to take risk. In this business, you're going to fail most of the time. Success is perhaps few percent. But if you're not going to take this huge risk, you're going to miss these few percent. And over the last, and I'll show you, over the last 67 years that the Weizmann Institute exists, I can show you that there's been a major payoff, and I'll show you the payoff. Last but not least, and perhaps the most expensive one, is protect their freedom to think. If you really hire outstanding individuals, they know better than you know. So allow them to think, allow them to drive, allow them to be independent, and don't guide them, actually follow them. And that's the role of management of scientific institutions, is to follow the top scientists, not to guide them. They know better than we know. With that business plan, you would ask another question, looks like very nice. Does it work? I mean, the Weizmann Institute exists for the last 67 years, since 1949. Exactly in November, actually, today, or tomorrow, actually, is exactly 67th anniversary of the establishment of the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. And the question one could ask is, does it work? So the question is, how do you measure? I mean, how do you measure the quality or the value or the impact of scientific research, which is very fundamental? I show you, it needs years to measure. You don't even know where it goes and what it really means. So clearly, there's no one single parameter. And this is why, by the way, I'm always very suspicious about the ideas of ranking universities. I know people love the university ranking, be that Shanghai or Times or I don't even know other names. But that, by the way, is quite a subjective ranking. And it's actually even a dangerous ranking. And the reason it is a dangerous ranking is because it tends to put everyone along the same line. What we need is innovative thinking. Innovative thinking doesn't come by ranking people. You actually need to get out of the ranking. It's people who think totally differently that can be successful, or sometimes are successful. How do you make these people fitting into a ranking which actually tend to rank millions of other individuals? They don't fit. And if they don't fit, and if we really believe in this ranking, they are never going to be higher. And that, of course, is going to be a problem. So ranking by itself is actually a major source of concern if you believe too much in it, and specifically if you drive your own institution to be at the top of the ranking. Yet there is sometimes ranking which is valuable, but again, be very, very, very careful about reading this ranking. And one of the things we're looking for is scientific excellence. And there are different ways of measuring this. And one of them, and I don't want you to trust it completely, and I don't even want you to look at what is number 5 and 10 and 15 and 20, because it really doesn't matter. They're all outstanding scientific institutions. But this is the Weizmann Institute of Science, which is the first institution outside of the United States when you want to compare mean citation score. That is not how much science you're producing, not the quantity of it, but actually the quality. Citation index tells you not how much you've published, not how much knowledge you've put outside, but rather how other people have been using the knowledge you've been producing. And you can see that without any strategy in terms of science, but a lot of strategy in terms of HR, human resources, you can achieve quite a high ranking. And again, it doesn't matter if it's number 10. I don't really trust this, but it's quite reasonable at the high end of this ranking. The second thing is, back in the 1959, we established a tech transfer company. We understood that even though it is all curiosity-driven, the history shows that curiosity ultimately can be useful, and that it takes time for others to pick up on these ideas and develop them. This is data that shows you the sales of product, not the value of companies, the real sales of product in billions of dollars of products based on licenses from the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. Last year, the value or the sales, of this product based on licenses of ideas developed at the Weizmann Institute reached more than $30 billion. Not bad for curiosity, right? No strategy, only hiring the right people and allowing them to work freely. And I think that is a strategy that seems to work if you take it the long time, and it took many years to reach that level. It is a strategy which is not easy to work with. There's a lot of pressure outside to be focused on some topics. There's a lot of money available for specific topics, not a lot of money, not a lot of funding, which is focused on curiosity. So I think this demonstrates that you can do it if you have really the grasp and the future, the look for the long range of science and understand what the value is behind the curiosity. So just to finish my lecture, I need to answer a question that I'm always asked. What do I think is the next scientific revolution? And I'm saying you realize that I have no idea of it. I just have no idea what will be the next scientific revolution. But there's one thing I do know. I don't know what will be the next scientific revolution. I do know who will make the next scientific revolution. This I know very well. These are outstanding scientists who are knowledgeable, curious, and passionate about their own business. Thank you very much. What are the questions now?
Maybe let us.
Okay.
Sure.
네, Daniel Zajfman, thank you very much. 아주 흥미로운 그리고 여러 가지를 생각해 하는 그런 얘기였습니다. 다음은 아까 말씀드린 대로 마틴을 모시고 그 디자인과 비즈니스 아마 앞에 말씀과는 또 굉장히 다른 그런 측면에서 우리의 미래 설계를 말씀해 주실 것 같습니다. 자, 부탁드리겠습니다. Please.
So, thank you. Good morning. I now need to build on and connect to science and where that connects to markets through design. So, I'm going to cover three quick topics really that I'm not giving in a huge amount of detail. I'm waiting to see if you've got them on the screen. Yeah, let's go back to the title. And here are the topics I'm going to cover. So, firstly, this is a human resources talk. Why on earth is design relevant to you guys? I'm going to touch on design thinking because it's a very talked about topic, and I think I'd like to clear up some issues there. These are from a personal perspective, and I want to share with you a little bit about our approach to how we solve design problems and try and create powerful solutions. To introduce myself first, so I'm one of the founders of the business. We've been running for 27 years. We help businesses break new ground with design, with innovation, looking to make businesses profitable and consumers happy, finding that perfect balance. We do that by having a multicultural team. Having a broad team is very important to our business. And even though, as Mr. Kim has said, we are a small company of 35 people, we have 3 offices and we work 90% of the time outside of the UK. So being international is very important. And one of the reasons that people come to us is because we're used to working with large organizations who are developing services, offering retail solutions, or working in the manufacturing sector, and they value the knowledge that that brings. So we work in the 3 areas of innovation, strategy, and design, and generally what we're doing is helping people transform their brand or transform the experience that they deliver to customers, because it's no longer about products or individual things, it's very much about the whole experience that people buy into. So what can that mean? It can mean very different things. In Spain, it's meant helping Cepsa try and bring people back to their petrol stations and stop them driving past. A simple thing, introducing a new canopy and a new service that transforms the experience customers get. For Thales in the US, it's about helping envision the future of an IFE system on the back of an economy seat. What will you be doing in an aeroplane in the future? Developing things to the point where you can touch them and feel them and use them and learn about how they will be used. In other cases, it's about helping people develop new business models. So movable hotel rooms, which can be driven to a site within one day constructed, and through that delivering a different experience that fits with the requirements of that location. Or in working in Seoul and with Innisfree, part of the Amore Pacific group, we have helped them to develop a new retail store, which is actually forming a test bed for what their future customer experience will be like. It's not just about creating an environment, it's actually about them road testing what change might be for them to see how consumers react to it. So they're all very, very different things. And of course, not just the big things, we also think about the very small things as well. So with Cathay Pacific and their new aircraft, we've created a very simple change to the headrest where the ears that give you support your head fold out rather than swing forward. So they provide an increased amount of comfort in the tiny confines of an economy seat. So why is design and talking about design thinking relevant to you? Well, on a resources basis, and this is research carried out by the Design Council for the design economy, the creative industries in total is the 9th biggest employer in the UK. It is a big sector that's delivering more change. Designers work very hard. They're measured at offering 41% more productivity than the average worker, and they're adding significantly to the economy. So using design well is clearly very important for whoever you are. Importantly to me, though, design forms a part of the creative industries and forms a part of soft power. How do you engage people in a future which is softer, more accepting, more sensitive, more carefully thought through, rather than hard, factual, measured, which we know doesn't work quite as effectively as we would like. So if I look at the skills that designers have, and this is not my list, this is a list that Larry Keeley from the Doblin Group presented, designers offer an awful lot of benefits. Because we do things very intuitively that make a difference. We conceive things and we make things tangible. We're very good at making things distinctive and different from somebody else. We're good at empathizing with people and learning from people and what they do. We can imagine all sorts of crazy new things. We have a sense of how to make new meaningful. And most importantly, we're very, very good at kind of dealing with and living with ambiguity. That means that designers sometimes considered to be risk takers, but of course, taking risk is very important if you're going to deliver a real change. In terms of developing things and making them robust, though, we're very good at testing things and iterating them and developing them and making them work, and then amplifying and clarifying the qualities that they have to make them sell and help people engage with them. Because in the end, what we need to do is make the thing that we're creating the preferable solution that contributes value. So an overview of design thinking. It's a very talked about topic, and I'm not going to go into depth. It's been made popular by IDEO and Tim Brown, and through the book Change by Design, they really talk about how they deconstructed design into different aspects, and they've put that power into the hands of people. I think that's a very good thing because it's demystified design and it's made design understandable to a wider range of people. But it hasn't made those people become designers. It's just made them more aware of what designers do. One can now go and study at a school that will teach you the methodology of design. You may not become a designer through doing so. You'll learn about tools and techniques that help you analyze different aspects or different facets and reach a considered conclusion. Again, it's very useful, but it doesn't make them become a designer. And some, like Roger Martin, for example, are looking very deeply at how can we embed analytical thinking with intuitive thinking? How can we make a business try and embrace intuition in a better way? And in so doing, trying to find a better way of envisioning the future. What might that future be and how might it change? At the same time, and the reason there's a change of color, there's an awful lot of people questioning, is this right? So there's a lot of designers saying, on its own, design thinking is no substitute for smart designers. And I think they're right. That is an important aspect. And in terms of the MBAs or the business schools, they're also wondering whether design thinking can take the very spreadsheet, numbers-based approach that management consultancies adopt and help you predict what an outcome of that will be. My view is that it doesn't work in the long term. It gets you a little bit closer, but it doesn't get you all the way to creating things that people really use and that you really learn from. So for me, the power of design thinking is it demystifies design, it takes the mystery away, it makes complex things more simple. It's strong in terms of methodology, in terms of creating a change which you can implement easily. It's good because it involves users early in a process, and you can learn significantly from that. And very importantly, and I think for a human resources forum, it promotes capability building. It helps to build capability within an organization, which moves that organization on in total. But the downside of it to me is that it takes an extreme user focus. It tends to focus on people and what they do. Method, in many ways, can overpower intuition. It kills the skill of a designer. It kills the intuitive spark of a designer. And very significantly to me, and certainly to our organization, it doesn't focus sufficiently on brand or the commercial imperatives. which are the things that designers need if they really are going to convert ideas, into valuable services or products. To me, there's no question that design is about understanding the money side of the equation. What is it economically which makes it right? And how do you mesh that with the magic side of the equation, the very soft, intuitive feeling that good designers really have? And I think it is about good design. It involves method. It definitely involves a methodical approach. But that needs to be balanced with talent and experience. All of those things are powerful if you're going to see through a lot of information and find the right effective solution to a problem. So how can I give you a clear example of converting design thinking into an impact for business? That's quite difficult. And it's a little bit connected to the first speaker, that one of the problems you have is that design and the problems that are being solved are incredibly diverse, and it's very, very difficult to predict what the outcome might be unless you do an awful lot of exploration and an awful lot of work. So I'm just going to show 3 different examples. James Dyson has developed new technology for moving air and removing dust from it, and he's applied that over a long period of time to different products, starting with vacuum cleaners, moving to fans, and now moving to new hairdryers. It took him 15 years to create the first product and get it to market, and he's very proud of the fact that he built over 5,000 prototypes looking to develop that technology and making it work. But he runs a small company in the UK, manufacturing overseas, and is now worth $1.5 billion. So he's managed to develop, building on technology, a strong path which is distinctive. Uber, of course, are a service, not a physical product. They were just founded in 2009. They have completely disrupted a market and a service provision being provided by taxi drivers and such like. I know they're not allowed in Korea, and you don't want your taxi system threatened by Uber, but it's still an important case study to think about and the effect that they've had. They're now in 60 countries and over 400 cities. And in total, their business is considered to be worth 66 billion as a recent valuation. And to reflect on some of the work that our company has been famous for, back in the year 2000, we helped British Airways fix their problem in business class through the invention of the first lie-flat bed in business class. This was launched in 2000. Even though they spent $300 million developing the seat, certifying it, and then launching it onto all of their aircraft, the return on that investment was recovered within the first 12 months. So owning that concept is very powerful to this business. The same approach and the same method was not used to develop any of those concepts. A distinctive approach was required for all. The second version of the seat was also launched in 2006, and it is still based on the patent that was created at the beginning, which gives this new format of now known as yin-yang, with one seat facing forwards and one seat facing backwards, which offers what we call the perfect balance of density plus desirability. It gives a very high level of space efficiency at the same time as putting somebody, a passenger, into their own space, into their own environment, and radically changing the experience that they get. The patent has existed, it's about to run out, so BA need to work very hard to try and find what the future possibility for them might be, and we know that they've been doing that. And this product is still flying to this day, even though the original concept was created in 1998. So design is challenging, but actually if you stand back and think about all of those things that we've shown you, there are fairly common success factors that you can concentrate on from the beginning. So they've all created a gap that they have become recognized for. They've owned that space by developing something unique and distinctive. they've developed a method and an approach which enables them to capture value from the tangible aspects of what they've got, but also from the intangibles. They're looking to get a perfect balance across all of those things. They built their brand around an icon, something which is very clear, very simple for people to understand, and which is also very connected to the values of the business. So it's easy for them to talk to people about who they are and what makes them different, which is a very powerful thing in this incredibly crowded world. And they've looked to develop an experience that works across all of the brand touch points. They question every aspect of the product and the service that they deliver, and they look to get uniqueness working across all of those things. So to go on into more detail would be too challenging in this. What designers do, though, is not just think about the object or the service that they create. They have to think about the challenging opposites that exist, which shape the end outcome and help you try and understand whether the thing you are creating is right or wrong. So to give one example in context, I will show a short case study just to give you a feeling for how designers do what they do in a different situation, so you can get a sense of the perspectives. So Heathrow Express is a train that runs between Heathrow Airport in the UK and Paddington Station. It's expensive to take. It's much more expensive than riding the subway or the tube. But the benefit is you arrive in 15 minutes between close to central London and the airport. At the half-life of the train, this company wanted to change the quality of the interior and the experience partly because of the Olympics and partly because the train was half the way through its life. So we were brought in because they were asking themselves questions in the design of the first-class carriage. Why are people paying for it? People are walking past the front carriage and going to the other carriages because there's no significant benefit being offered, yet they wanted to take advantage of this carriage and change it to be something that's better. Looking at the picture, you can see that it's quite a conventional-looking train interior, and the seats are arranged in a conventional way. And why is that? It's because industries tend to default to the norm, and they tend to do what they know well, and they're frightened to challenge the convention around those things and look for new things that make them different. And designers, if you enable them to work in the right way, can help you to disrupt that. So we would always start by learning about the existing thing, just doing some very simple observation of how people are using things now. And from that, you get some startling insights into how change might be used. One is the people traveling on this train are largely on their own. They don't sit in groups. They go and sit in seats by themselves. They bring their luggage, and if they can, they keep their luggage next to them. They don't leave them at a luggage rack. And they never use the overhead luggage rack because they're just not on the train for long enough. All of those elements existed in the original train because at the start, nobody asked the question, are they required or not? And how can you bring change? So we will always look very carefully at the whole of the passenger journey or customer experience, analyzing each element and looking for the areas where we can bring change that will bring benefit. We will think very closely about who is traveling on this train and what are they trying to get from it. Get to understand the mindset of the customer, what's important for them and what sets the context of what they're receiving. We will look closely at the needs of that customer to then try and find different solutions that can respond in an appropriate way to what those needs are. And then we will start to visualize what that experience might be like. What are the qualities of the environment and of the experience that will bring a difference? Spanning from, on the left, how do you just deal with light and shadow and make something feel different, to on the right, how do you provide a service on board even if it's via a tablet or via the internet, that somebody can use in 15 minutes and get real value from. We will look at how can the convention that exists be challenged. So the top plan view shows the original layout of seats, where many of them are groups of 4, and where we know through observation they're not used because people want to sit on their own. They don't want to sit with somebody else on this short journey. And so we can look to develop a different format that makes it work for the environment. We can also think not just about the environment itself, but how can this whole service experience be transformed? So with a digital tool, if you're paying for your ticket on your app and you're being given a seat to sit in by that app, you don't then have to be disturbed by the ticket collector, and he can leave you to enjoy your time. And of course, ideally, you want to make that happen in a very simple way. And we're looking, of course, to make sure that all of those passengers' needs are fully met. They don't need a large table in front of them. They'll be working in a very short space of time. They want their luggage to be close to them, and they want the experience to fit with their needs. And through that, we can then set a vision for the interior that will help them to deliver quick change. It will bring impactful results. It will give you the sense that change has occurred, not just that change is really there. We can bring in small changes, simple things like screen printing stripes onto the windows to give a feeling of blinds, to change the sense of an atmosphere, removing the elements that you don't need, the overhead racks that you put your luggage into, but then bring a powerful shift and a major improvement into the quality of the experience that you get. Okay, so that concludes a short case study. So rather than going back, the key points I want to finalize with and connect with are, if you're thinking of what designers can do for you or for within your business, bear in mind that we don't work in silos, particularly from the consultancy sector. We work across many organizations with people at different levels and in different roles. So we have tremendous cross-sector knowledge. Our experience spans from gathering key insights, understanding at the very beginning of a journey what something might be, right the way through to end delivery. We are there doing it, and we know when it works, and we know when it goes wrong. We have very transferable skill sets. I trained as a designer, but I spend my life flying around the world, presenting work or giving talks at conferences or looking for new business. So we develop abilities beyond the core set that we start out with. We cannot avoid the fact that we have first-hand experience of success and failure. And that's very, very important if you want to have experience which is meaningful and you can translate that into different business sectors. And we have critical, and I insert the word design, we have critical design-related knowledge, which is very helpful and powerful within a leadership team, which is often dominated by people who come from a finance background rather than from a design background. We can deliver much more fundamental change by doing so. And of course, because we create things that sell, we have a good insight, a good gut instinct into how will something work in the channels and the markets that it's selling in, so we can try and make that thing as relevant as possible and as appealing possible to the customers who are being targeted. So that concludes my talk. Thank you very much, and we look forward to any questions. Okay.
네, 오늘 HR 포럼 첫 번째 세션에서 대단히 재미있는 두 가지 얘기를 들은 것 같습니다. 이렇게 새로운 가치를 만들어내는 것으로서 하나는 호기심을 쫓는 연구, curiosity driven research라고 말씀하셨고요. 그리고 또 하나는 새로운 디자인, 이렇게 생활을 편안하게 그리고 생활을 아름답게 하는 그 새로운 디자인의 가치, 이 두 가지 전혀 다른 그러나 하여튼 우리의 삶을 더 모든 측면에서 더 편안하게 한다는 점에서는 마찬가지죠. 그 두 가지 이야기에 대해서 말씀해 주신 두 분께 다시 한번 감사드리면서 저희가 시간이 약 30분 정도 있습니다. 가능한 한 많은 분들로부터 질문을 받고 대답을 받고 또 의견을 나누는 그런 기회를 만들도록 하겠습니다. 퀘스천 시트들이 왔는데 몇 가지 질문을 여기서 제가 우선 뽑아서 드리도록 하겠습니다. 우선 제가 우선 시작을 하기 위해서 제가 질문을 드리면은 데니엘 자이프만 총장께 말씀드리면은 그 아카데미아는 transform knowledge into money 그리고 비즈니스가 transform knowledge into money 그리고 아카데미아는 transform money into knowledge 이렇게 말씀하셨는데 최근에 이제 많은 대학들은 와이즈만 인스티튜트 같은 데는 그야말로 베이직 사이언스에 대해서만 연구하는 곳이니까 조금 다를 수 있습니다만은 최근에 많은 대학들은 소위 Research Oriented University, 연구 중심 대학을 넘어서 Entrepreneurial University, 가치를 창출하는 그런 대학. 그래서 대학이 직접 직업도 만들고 기업도 만들어내는 그런 역할을 많이 강조하고 있는 것 같습니다. 그런 측면에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하시는지 한번 우리 데니엘께 여쭤보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, so just to be correct, my sentence was that universities are transforming money into knowledge, and the industry needs to transfer that knowledge into money again. So that's the difference. There are, of course, different types of research universities, and not all of them should be focused on curiosity-driven research. That's not what I said. Many universities do applied research, and I think that's perfectly all right and perfectly correct. In fact, I would even say that probably most of them should do kind of applied research. What I'm trying to say is that not enough are doing the curiosity-driven part, and that's being forgotten. As far as university becoming entrepreneurial, I think there's a problem here. The problem is competition. And what is the framework in which you're working? If you want to be an entrepreneur, you should work into a free market. A free market does not include, for example, the issues of tenure, academic promotions, and all that business, which is usually the field of universities and academics. So what I see is the conflict between the way one makes research moving forward into an academic setup, which is focused on excellent academic development of knowledge, together with entrepreneurship, which is focused on making a lot of money and being successful in the market. And so I'm actually for those dividing these things in two parts, universities doing best what they can do, which is the type of research which is academic, perhaps even, I would even say, providing solutions to problems that do not even exist today, and leaving to the world of industry to do research, or rather development for the market. And there's nothing wrong about any of these two parts. I mean, industry must do development. Without the development of the industry, the research done within the university is useless. But if you really combine all of them together and force the university to be entrepreneurship, then everyone will want to be there because that's where the money is, and then there will be no more curiosity-driven research, and the solutions for the next 100 years will not be developed. That's the way I look at it. So yes, I am for some kind of a division of business.
다른 하나는 여기 계신 분이 보내준 질문을 제가 읽도록 하겠습니다. 우리 Tangerine에 관한 질문인데요. 첫 번째 질문이 why the name Tangerine? And the second is, do you serve only for first-class people? Okay, please.
Well, Tangerine was chosen originally for very simple reasons. Number one, it didn't have any. Oh, excuse me. It didn't have any connection with the founders of the business. We didn't want somebody's name associated with the business. We needed something which was independent. The little fruit is reasonably well known in most European countries, so the name is recognizable and pronounceable. And the color, the orange color, is a sign of health and prosperity in Asia, so it had a positive symbol. We did consider the word orange, the name orange instead, but we decided not to choose it because there were two major negatives associated with it over time. But then a big telecom company decided to choose it instead. So, you know, clearly that's an issue. Yeah. So, and as a second question, do we deal only with business class or first class? No. The seat that we showed for Cathay Pacific is an economy seat, and it's designed to try and improve comfort in that market. The challenge for designers in this world is an economy seat is a commodity now, and so bringing change to it is very difficult. And one of the challenges designers have is breaking those business models which enable change to happen. Most airline seat manufacturers make their money from spare parts, not from selling the seat to a customer. So they're more concerned with designing something where they can get their income ongoing from spare parts than they are from looking to deliver real innovations which make people more comfortable. So that is just a reality of business. I think that means there is an opportunity to break that, but you've got to be ready and prepared to spend a lot of money to try and bring that kind of change.
또 몇 개 재밌는 질문을 제가 전하도록 하겠습니다. For Daniel first, well, you mentioned hiring excellent scientists is very important. The question is, how do you define, how do you know the excellent scientist? It's a very difficult question, right?
Yeah, it is a difficult question, but it is really a relevant one. It's a very important one, especially given the fact that this conference is human resource. So this is really the fundamental point. You know, I'll tell you something about the process that we go through before hiring a scientist, which is really a long process. But before even I would say something about the process, I'd like to tell you that there are many mistakes. We do many mistakes. There's no way to do this business and hiring outstanding individuals without being wrong. I mean, that we have to agree on this. And so, and we have to know that ahead of time, and the whole system knows that we can be wrong. And we have to agree that once we are wrong, we're going to separate ourselves from that person. So we hire wrong people, but we also allow them, or if you want, ask them to leave, okay? And later on, so it takes time. But in terms of hiring, what we're looking at, and you know, it's a process we do for scientists, by the way, for students. Let me say a few words about finding the right students. When we hire, we also hire students because we pay them. We don't take in students because of their high grade. So they come from undergraduates, they have undergraduates from another university in physics, chemistry, mathematics, and all these young people are very, very good students, there's no doubt. The question is, how do you take the ones who are curious and passionate? Knowledge is given by the grade, let's say. The only way you can do that is by going through a lengthy personal interview. And in this interview, and I've been doing this interview quite a lot in the past for students, what we usually did was to ask two different types of questions. The first question was, as for a physicist, you know, the kind of questions that someone who has gone through physics in high school would know the answer, which is very simple, make them comfortable. And the second question immediately would be a question that nobody knows the answer, but really nobody. There are many things in science we don't know. So we ask the student a question, nobody knows the answer. Not even us, nobody in the world knows the answer. And then you look at how they think. If you get a feeling that they don't want to answer this because they've never learned this, that's probably the wrong case. If you find someone who is actually trying to convince you that they know the answer and that your question is not the right question, but there's another question which looks like this one that could be solved, and try to push the system, the problem, into a different corner, you start to get the right type of individuals. You can see that the same issues with scientists. Those who are trying to tackle huge problems that they have no answer. And that those people come and say, I know how to solve it, and it's probably not right. And then other people successfully can transform this complicated problem into smaller, easy to understand, different situations and problems. And that's the first sign of someone thinking in a different way, not just going front to the problem, but rather aside. So we make an assessment, really a personal assessment of the way of thinking. And the last point I'd like to say is the following. Only first-grade people can hire first-grade people. And the reason is because second-grade people usually hire third-grade people. And the reason they do that is because they're afraid of the first-grade people. So you have to have first-grade people doing the job.
Okay. Then how much percent of your researchers are asked to leave since first employment?
Yeah. So we have a tenure process, which is like any other university. And the ask to leave, you'll find it very interesting, depends very much on the field. For example, if you're a mathematician, we can recognize outstanding mathematicians from the age of 20. In fact, if you cannot recognize a mathematician to be outstanding at the age of 20, it's probably, you're probably over. And so with mathematicians, there are very few mistakes, and they don't leave because once you recognize how outstanding they are, and then your physicists, chemists, and biologists. The most complicated people are biologists, not because they're not excellent, but simply because the type of science that today biology requires is much more lengthy, and creating evidence-based data or evidence-based hypothesis is way more complicated. So from 0% in terms of mathematicians to 40% in terms of biologists, in the middle of physicists and chemists, that's the amount of people who are living. That's how many mistakes we're doing, but it's very much field dependent. It is not the same thing. And by the way, that's another thing. Every science has its own different culture, and you have to adapt to it. You have to adapt yourself to it.
Okay, thank you. And another question to Martin is, how do you deal, or do you have a business with the service industry, like Twitter or something, without tangible product, I mean?
So is the question, do we use Twitter or do we work with clients who are developing digital
So you are
things?
working with Twitters or?
We use digital marketing, yes, of course. It's a very important part of what we do to promote our business. And we do work with customers who are developing service offers. So we currently have a project to see if we can help a product sell better, which is not selling very well, by changing the whole service experience, not just for the customer that's selling something in the store, but actually for the person who's selling the product to the channel who's then selling it. So yes, service design is a growing part of design activity, and the end outcome from that may not be a physical, tangible thing. It may actually be a service process where you help engage customers more quickly and more effectively with something.
You mentioned that to be a good designer, well, design knowledge is important, and the knowledge of cross-section, it's also important. But well, for me, I think the talent on art, that should be quite, that's maybe most important, no? And the talent on art, it can be educated one, of course, but it's maybe, born to, it's talented even when you're baby, you know. I mean, yeah.
I think they're all important, and I think the issue is it depends what your role within design is. The most difficult thing in design is actually getting to design. It's not doing the design, which I suspect might be similar in certain scientific sectors, really, because there's a huge degree of misunderstanding of the role of design and also of its potential, and that is partly the fault of designers. I think, as I've mentioned already, design thinking is very helpful in helping people understand what designers do, how they think, and making it become comfortable and familiar. But we also have a reputation of being being risk takers, and business and industry in general is tremendously risk averse. So we have to be quite smart about the way we showing what we do and how we do it, and how we mitigate risk as best we can. Although that can be difficult at times. The one example I will give is for the Club World seat, the yin yang seat. The concept was initially developed to full-size models and tested with 100 consumers, and 10 of them said categorically they would not fly facing backwards. So that raised a huge question around the viability of the concept and whether it could move forward. The head of the project said, I don't believe that. Then ran a questionnaire in the business class lounge with 2,500 customers were interviewed, and only 1% said they wouldn't fly facing backwards. So it's very dependent on how you ask the question, which is also why, as designers, we have to work with the market research teams who are evaluating things, because we have to help them understand the context of the problem that's being created so that they can try and get a representative answer from the research that they create.
Thank you. I have another question to Daniel. Well, since you are the leader of science, how do you think of AI, artificial intelligence, and how do you see the future of human being governed by AI?
I have to admit that the first thing I worry about is natural intelligence, which I'm not sure exists actually, before we talk about artificial intelligence. I'm not an expert in fields, and I usually don't like to speak about things I don't understand, though. There's clearly a major change, and there's clearly major new ideas in the fields, mostly due to the increasing amount of CPU power we can grab, and of course, the huge amount of data storage we can create. That has developed into a new opportunity which allows us to create new algorithms that can use basically this CPU power and the data storage, and people developing new algorithms. Now, if you ask me where it goes, I just explained to you that nobody can make a good guess about what the future is, and so I'll respect my own line of thought and will not make any prediction about where artificial intelligence will be going. I don't think we actually know that.
Thank you. Well, I really have an interesting question to Martin. Well, what would you design or redesign HR for employees to have a better experience in companies? Design of HR, this meeting.
Okay. The one topic we didn't talk about within this talk because we didn't have time is what we call design immersion. So with a number of our clients who are large corporations with large design teams, now their team members are being based within our office. So we're taking them out of their environment, out of their silo, and into a different space to get them to think differently about the markets. Often the only inspiration they get is going to a trade show, which is basically what they see is just what their competitors are doing. they seldom get the opportunity to move away from that. And also we take them on a very wild cultural safari, so we give them a very different experience from that they're normally used to. We found that very successful for us because actually we establish a close association with the client, we understand them better, and it builds a better business relationship. But the people that have been involved in design immersion, when they go back, have often been promoted or developed, and it's changing the way that business is working. So we've been doing this with Nikon and with Seiko, both in Japan. We have people from Nikon and Seiko working within our office, and they're developing together new approaches to how they design. So for me, that's the most powerful example I have seen of trying to bring an effective change.
Well, another question also to Martin is that, well, although you have a wide market in the worldwide, and you have many works to do, but why do you keep a very small company? I mean, number of people.
Okay. I think it's because if you grow the business, the people at the top of the business end up needing to be running that business, and it's a change of role. Our size, I think, is governed by the fact that we want to be able to do the interesting things, the things that we like, rather than continually have to look to bring in income which pays the bill. So it gives us freedom to be a different and more distinctive business. We're not just running. There are some very big design consultancies in China, for example, that have grown at an astronomical rate with the success of their clients, but they're not very profitable and they're not doing very interesting work. So I prefer to be smaller, more profitable, leaner, meaner, more capable than bigger, because I don't think necessarily bigger makes you better. It just makes you bigger.
한 5분쯤 더 시간이 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 뭐 여기 들어온 질문들 몇 개 더 여쭤보는 것으로 하겠습니다. Well, to Daniel, what roles should the government play to create and motivate the excellent people with excellent ideas for developing countries like Korea?
Korea is a developing country?
Well, developing.
Korea is a fully developed country. At least that's the way I look at it. I've been here a few times. I don't think this is a developing country. So again, there's not one agenda or one way of looking at this in order to develop a basis for outstanding science and outstanding technology and so forth. Clearly you need a lot of parameters, and some of them exist in different countries in different ways. And one of the best way to look at this perhaps is to compare what is happening in Korea and what is happening in Israel. Korea is a country with major manufacturing capabilities and engineering. You can actually transform ideas into amazing businesses. I don't think there are many countries that can do what is being done in Korea today. Israel cannot do that. Israel, not because it is a smaller country, there's only 8 or something million individuals, but rather because there's a different culture. Korea has a culture of common good, where the philosophy and the culture of the country allow you, and I see that as a huge advantages, to create value which is driven by a lot of individuals together, while Israel is a country of individualism, where value is mostly developed by single individuals. There's nothing wrong here, and there's nothing wrong here. It's all good in different parts. In fact, I think it's very much complementary. So the first thing I'd like to say is don't try to copy what other countries are doing. Everyone has its own ecosystem. It is valuable, and in fact, I do believe that one should invest in its own ecosystem, because trying to do what other countries have as a strategy can be very different. And the reason is because it collides with your own culture. And culture is very important and doesn't need to be changed. Actually, it's a pity that you have to change it, even though global, or globalization tend to smooth these things. There's still major differences between countries. And like many others, I think that we should keep these values to increase the assets that we have in all countries. So you need different parts of it, and not every country has exactly the same scheme and should not have the same scheme, because if all countries would have the same scheme, we would all do the same thing. And that's, of course, the end of imagination and the end of innovation. The fact that different countries run their business sciences from the fundamental research all the way to the industry in a different way is actually a major advantage. And I don't know why different countries try always to look at other places and copy what they're doing because they think they're doing well. I don't think so. I think it's very much a local issue, and one should strengthen the local culture and the local capabilities so that we can do more. But clearly, there is a need of all pieces within this puzzle, starting from basic research, applied research, translational research, industry, marketing, design. All this has to be together. The weight of it is culture dependent.
Okay, maybe the last one to Daniel is that, well, science is important, engineering is important, but it seems that the leading industry is moving from manufacturing to soft industry, like a movie industry, for instance. Then what's your thought about it? What's your prediction for the future? Your comments.
I think I made a statement that one cannot predict this future. So I'll stick to it.
But you can invent it, yeah?
Sure. So there are people inventing it. And what I see at the steps of today is clearly that, what we thought as commodities, things that are materials, and we believe that values was in producing things, okay, elements, microphones, books, and electronics. We see major companies producing nothing and but still having huge value. I mean, Google is a company like this. Google doesn't produce anything. Well, they have some phones now, it seems. But so far, until last year, they were producing absolutely nothing. There was not a single product that you could call Google. It was all knowledge base. And clearly, you're moving in such a direction where more and more of these things will happen. And I can even say that also in terms of manufacturing, it will move from a position where there will be, and that will take a long time, major manufacturing plants to very small one, and clearly personalized design, or what you see today as the beginning of 3D printing, for example, will allow every one of us to download their software and create a piece of, a shirt the way we want it at home. And that shirt will be different from your shirt. And the only way it will be different is because they've downloaded different software, and I don't need to go to a shop. I can download the software, have my machine printing my shirt, wear it today, and throw it tomorrow. Okay. So indeed, this business of moving from the material industry to a virtual industry is moving forward, and that's due to, again, the ability or the CPU power and storage that we are developed again, something that I don't think anyone here could have predicted even 10 years ago. Nobody knew 10 years ago that cloud storage and cloud computing would be something so critical. So think about 10 years from now, what will happen? Nobody knows.
Okay, another, well, this is also the last question to Martin. Then, how to educate new generations to be a good designer? What elements or philosophy they need to learn? Maybe you have mentioned already, but maybe somewhat in detail.
It's very difficult to know how one thing can influence somebody. I think within education and within design education, I think there's an aspect to it, a side to it, which is about the transferable skill side, and that's very, very important. It needs to be developed. But I think also education has to understand that only a certain percentage of those people, of the people that study design, will move into design, and they need to be handled slightly differently in a way. They need to be given a different kind of education which focuses on the creative side. Still, to me, the biggest issue is that they get a wide understanding of the context of what they're doing, because context is the thing that really shapes design. And our test of understanding whether somebody can design something is looking at how they respond to context. I can normally tell when I see a portfolio, if I see one thing, I can know whether somebody can design or not. But if we're employing people, we give them a design challenge that they have to do in a day, and they have to produce an answer. We call it the flight challenge. So I have to fly around the world and fix a presentation or design something, and I normally get a day to do it in. And that's a very good way of understanding whether young designers can find something interesting and distinctive, and you get a sense of, is their line of inquiry relevant and beneficial. So it's a difficult answer to question to answer.
Thank you.
Okay.
감사합니다. 12시 33분이 됐네요. 저희 이 세션을 마쳐야 할 시간인 것 같습니다. 오늘 이렇게 뭐 많은 질문을 보내주셨는데 제가 다 소화하지도 못했습니다. 그러나 하여튼 이렇게 함께 참석해 주시고 또 좋은 강연을 해주신 두 분께 깊은 감사드립니다. 어쨌건 우리 미래는 여러 가지 측면에서 불확실한 것 같습니다. 그러나 그 미래를 또 가꾸어 나가는 가꾸어 나가야 하는 것이 우리의 소명이라고 생각하고요. 그렇게 좀 더 밝은 미래를 위해서 오늘 많은 분들이 지혜를 나눈 것에 대해서 감사하게 생각합니다. 우리 연사 두 분께 감사의 박수로서 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다. Okay, thank you.